Want to know how to build suspense in your writing? Today, Elizabeth George will discuss the methods she used for her newest book, Something to Hide. She will also give us a preview of the next novel in the series. Hello, it's Kathy from HEC Books, where we go to published authors to find out about their methods. If you're new to the channel, stay up to date on the latest videos by subscribing. Now let's hear from Elizabeth George on how she builds suspense in her writing.
In addition to being so rich and vivid as far as setting and characters, you have so much suspense in your books, and in this book in particular. How do you keep that suspense going?
Suspense is the reader wanting to know more. And the way that I build suspense, or I build in the reader the desire to do more, is by always laying down a dramatic question when I am writing a scene. So in a novel like this, the big dramatic question, of course, is, well, who's the killer? And it could also be, why did the killer kill this person? So that's the overarching dramatic question. But each scene in the book needs to either answer or ask another dramatic question. Now, of course, I don't mean that I'm actually writing questions. I mean that I am planting something in each scene that propels the reader forward. And that is through dramatic questions, and it's through something it's through causality. And that means that something in this scene causes another scene to occur somewhere down the line. And it's usually the dramatic question that is going to cause another scene to happen. And so frequently I'm told by people that they were just propelled through a novel that was over 600 pages long, and they have no idea how they were able to read it so fast. And that's why I think that I'm really committed to the idea of causality and asking and answering dramatic questions.
Is this your 21st book or your 22nd?
It's my 21st Lynley novel. Yeah, it's not my 21st book, but my 21st Lynley novel. Yeah.
So at this point, do you even need to really think about that process, or is that just so intuitive with you of asking there being sort of a dramatic question in each scene that propels it? Is that just, or do you have to go back and revision and do that?
No, it isn't automatic. And although there are times I'm actually creating a scene when I see in that moment that a dramatic question could pop up based on what's gone before in the book and based on what I'm writing at that current moment. But because I do a lot of preliminary work, and because I do two kinds of outlining, the dramatic questions come up as I am actually doing those two processes, which occur before I do the rough draft. So what those processes allow for is moments of inspiration where I see, oh my gosh, here's where I could do X, or, oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that. I can now create this over here and call that Y. And so I've got X and I've got Y, and those are going to propel the reader forward, and they're going to lay down dramatic questions. But it's not really an automatic process. I wish it were. Nothing that I do is an automatic process.
How long does it take you to write a novel?
It takes about between 18 months and 2 years, depending on how many drafts I need to do to get it right. The Something to Hide actually required 5 drafts, and those were drafts that were generated by me, not by my editor. And it had to do with the fact that the timeline was critical to get right, because Lynley does not come into Something to Hide for, I think it's over 100 pages. And so the stuff that needs to happen in those first 100 pages is really crucial. It just doesn't have anything to do with Lynley. It does have to do with, with the crime. It does have to do with FGM, but it does not have to do with the kind of thing that Lynley would be involved with at that point. So it had to be written in such a way that the reader had the information but not all the information. So that when Lynley begins investigating the crime that occurs, the reader isn't ahead of Lynley. The reader needs to be either with Lynley or behind Lynley trying to catch up, but not in front of Lynley. So that necessitated five different five different drafts to put the reader, what I call put the reader on the right part of the wave, if the plot of the novel is a breaking wave. So if the plot of the novel is a breaking wave, then you want the reader swimming as fast as they can to catch up to the wave. You don't want the reader to be in front of the breaking wave. And that's what I had created for myself, which was a huge problem.
You teach creative writing now and then. That sounds like something that might be really valuable for your students and writers to know about, is sort of how that suspense works in building it.
Yeah, and when I explain it to people, they understand what I mean about the reader in the wave and how you don't want the reader,
Yeah.
on the wrong part of the wave. The reader can be like at the top where, just before the wave breaks. That's fine, but not. You don't want to put the reader in a position where she already knows something that the detective is going to find out. That's not going to work. And that was the problem that I was having.
Is your next book also a Lynley mystery set in England?
Yeah, the book I'm working on right now takes place in Cornwall. So it's the third book I've set in Cornwall. And Cornwall is where Lynley is from. That's where his father's had his big estate. The family estate is there. And in this particular book, I wanted to take a look at something called tin streaming. And tin streaming is a way of mining for tin that has been going on for hundreds and hundreds of years in England. It's really interesting. And so I was there in between Delta and Omicron during the worst of the pandemic. So there was this window of opportunity where everything had somewhat died down, and so I took that opportunity to go over and go directly to Cornwall and do my location research there, because I really couldn't have written this book without actually going to a tin streamer and seeing what his production of tin was like, and learning about this particular kind of mining, which is not at all like what we think of when we think of mines. So that's the thrust of this new book. Of course, but when I'm doing something like that, the thing about the tin streaming in this case, it's the underpinning of the story. And so it is, what one of the important characters in the book actually does and has been doing for in his family for several generations. So I like it. I like to expose the readers to things that they may not have been exposed to before regarding England, and so I'm always looking for stuff like that.
And Lynley gets to go back to his roots, which is probably also interesting from a character standpoint.
Well, yeah,
Is it?
Lynley will be, Lynley will be going there, but he will not be going there because of the crime that takes place. Barbara Havers, of all people, will be going there because of the crime that takes place. Lynley ultimately will be there, and he will then discover what's going on, but he is not the person who's investigating.
I have to ask you, as somebody who's hooked on British detective shows, I know that some of your books were made into a television series at one point. Has there been some renewed interest? Because they would just be perfect for streaming.
Yeah, there has been renewed interest. The books have been optioned again, but these not the books that have already been done. But there was a point at which I decided that I didn't want the BBC to make any more films, because I just felt that the books were being given short shrift because they were reducing them down just to the crime story when they were doing them on television. And they're much bigger than the crime story because it's also a book about society. And it's a book about the continuing characters for sure, but they're also dealing with the people that are either touched by the crime, involved in the crime, investigating the crime. And it deals with the books deal with their lives as well. So I did reach a point where I said to the BBC, no, I think that's all I really would like you to do with the books. And they asked if they could make their own Lynley shows with my characters. And I said, yeah, sure, you can do that as long as I can see the script in advance to make sure you're not doing anything totally crazy. So they did that for a while, but everything from a book called With No One as Witness onward has not been filmed. And that is what has been now optioned, is the books that haven't been filmed moving forward. So the thing about when something's optioned, though, is it just means it's optioned. They're interested. They do have a writer. The writer has created what they call the Bible, which is sort of what the first episodes in the plural would actually look like, and that's where we stand right now.
And do you get to be involved in that and say, that's accurate, that's how I would want it?
They'll send me the screenplays for input, but as far as and I've talked to them a little bit about casting. I would hope to get somebody who was younger. It's an actor who was possibly in his early 30s to play Lynley and to play Havers, rather than somebody who's going to age out of the part too soon.
Yeah, lots of material and wonderful characters that evolve over time, and books that evolve over time into what's going on in the world around us. That's what makes them just wonderful to read.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for being with us today to talk about this newest book, Something to Hide.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us again. Please give this video a thumbs up and make sure you subscribe if you haven't already.